Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eva Seyler. I wrote a book called The War in Our Hearts, which will be coming out on the 4th of August, 2021. In this video, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite World War I era novels that I have read. I have a stack of 6 books here, and I'm going to go in order of size because that's how they're stacked. So I would be remiss if I didn't include All Quiet on the Western Front. This is an absolute classic. It was written in 1928 originally, and it is written from the German perspective, just enlisted men in the trenches, and it's very bleak and very heart-wrenching. I read this back in my early 20s. So if you remember in my last video, me saying I didn't really know a whole lot about World War I, I'm not sure that I made the connection that this was World War I. It was long enough ago, I just don't remember. But this is the same edition that I had read back then. The translation is by A.W. Ween. I've read some other ones, and this is the one that I like the best. So, definitely one to start with. Classic, easy to find. The next one, Brewer's Rest. I'm not going to really talk about a whole lot because I'm going to bring this up in a later video. So, Jess Smith, Brewer's Rest. I will keep that for later. The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. This is actually, so far, the only book of hers that I've read. I have several of her others on my to-be-read list. Like, don't we all have hundreds of books we want to read and not enough time? Anyway, I really liked this book. It has a dual timeline, so there's a present day, 1947, so pretty quickly after World War II, girl looking for a lost relative that they last knew was in France. And she meets up with this crazy, crotchety old lady in London, and they go on a hunt for this missing girl. And so the old lady, there's the parallel storyline is set during World War I. Eve was a spy in World War I, so that's a very different thing that I haven't seen touched on really in World War I fiction, especially the fact that she's a woman spy. Of the two timelines, the World War I timeline I think is the best. It's just really riveting and interesting, and highly recommend this book. And for YA, young adult, we have Open Fire. I just have the arc of this one still at the moment, but this is really good. It's out now. It's been out for about a year. One of these days I'll get an actual copy. This is by Amber Lowe, and this one is interesting because it's set on the Eastern Front and also focuses on women in the war, specifically what's known as the Women's Battalion of Death, which was an all-girls regiment in World War I. And so it's just really interesting because it's got that, it's also got talk of the revolution that was simmering and starting to come to the forefront. Really great characters, great writing. Definitely give this one a try. And for middle grade, this is one of my favorite books ever, The Skylark's War. It begins quite a bit before the war, but it definitely covers World War I, and some of the characters fight in the war. It's also, because the main character's a girl, it's interesting to get a glimpse of the home front in England during the war, which is another thing that we don't often see, at least that I haven't often seen in World War I novels. I pretty much love everything Hilary McKay writes anyway, and this is definitely one of the best things she's written. And the last one on my stack is this doorstop of a book called The Summer Before the War. And it's really thick, but it's an excellent book. I always tell people it has, to me, an Elizabeth Gaskell vibe. Like, she wrote North and South, Wives and Daughters back in the early mid-1800s. That's what this author's style, at least in this book, reminds me of a lot. It takes its time getting where it wants to go, but it's never boring. The characters are fascinating. It covers a lot of different aspects of the war, both on the front as well as on the home front. It touches on the Belgian refugees that came to England at the beginning of the war. And it also, obviously it's called The Summer Before the War, so it kind of talks about what life was like in England right as the war was beginning, which to me is really interesting to see the setup and what society was like and kind of what people were thinking about and doing during those months before the war actually began. So also highly recommend it. Helen Simonson, The Summer Before the War. And as for some nonfiction that I would recommend, The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman is kind of the classic. That one's good. That one covers just the first month of the war. There's another one by Max Hastings, Catastrophe 1914, I think it's called, which covers only 1914, so the lead up to through pretty much the Christmas truce of 1914. I liked in that one that it actually talks a bit more about the Eastern Front than we usually get. So there was a lot of interesting stuff in that. And I will, by the way, I will put all the links to these books down in the description, so if you can't remember them afterwards, you'll find them down there. I also recommend The War That Ended Peace by Margaret Macmillan. It's really long, really in-depth. I think the audiobook was about 32 hours long. It took me like checking it out of the library 3 times, I think, to get through it, because I was really busy or something, I don't remember. Anyway, that one also talks a lot about what led into the war, which I think is super important to understand from a historical standpoint, why the war happened at all. That one covers that a lot, as well as the war itself. And there are a lot of other great nonfiction ones. Feel free to ask if there's a specific topic you're interested in. If I don't have it, chances are I might know if there is a book about it, or could try to point you in the right direction if there's something specific you're looking for. So that's it for this video. On the next video, I'll be talking specifically about The War in Our Hearts and kind of my writing process and how the book came to be. So I look forward to being back, and don't forget to like and subscribe and all that jazz, and I will see you on the next video.